Marcus Thompson balanced a tray of champagne flutes with practiced ease, weaving through the glittering crowd like a ghost. The royal obsidian ballroom was alive with wealth. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors, and the air itself seemed expensive, heavy with French perfume and the quiet confidence of people who'd never worried about rent. He was invisible here, exactly as he needed to be. After 3 years of working events for the catering company, he'd perfected the art of being present but unseen. He adjusted his bow tie, standard issue from the company, slightly too tight, and scanned the room. The tray was getting light. He'd need to return to the service kitchen soon for a refill. But first, he wanted to make sure the hors d'oeuvres station near the south entrance was properly stocked. His supervisor had a habit of checking the details Marcus was responsible for, hoping to find something wrong. He couldn't afford to give her ammunition. Not when Maya's school fees were due next week. Just thinking about Maya made this whole circus bearable. She was 7 now. All gap-toothed smiles and endless questions about everything from why the sky was blue to whether mermaids paid taxes. She was asleep at home with Mrs. Williams from 3B, probably curled up with that worn stuffed rabbit she refused to let him wash. Marcus moved along the perimeter of the room, keeping his eyes down out of habit. He'd learned early not to make eye contact with guests. Eye contact led to conversations, and conversations led to questions about his life, and those questions always ended the same way, with pity poorly disguised as polite interest. He was halfway to the service entrance when he heard it, a laugh that hit him like a physical blow, stopping him mid-step. His hand tightened on the tray, champagne flutes rattling dangerously. That laugh. He knew that laugh. It had haunted his dreams for 3 years. Marcus turned slowly, his heart hammering against his ribs. And there she was, Denise. His ex-wife stood near the center of the ballroom, draped in a crimson dress that probably cost more than his car. Her dark hair was swept up in an elegant updo, diamonds glittering at her throat and wrists. She looked like she belonged here, like she'd always belonged in places like this. Next to her stood a man, tall, distinguished, confident in the way that came from generations of inherited wealth. His hand rested possessively on the small of Denise's back. Marcus felt the old wound tear open fresh. 3 years since she'd left, since she'd looked him in the eye and told him she'd made a mistake. "I thought I could do this," she'd said, her voice flat. The struggling artist thing, the tiny apartment, the dreams that never quite materialize. "But I can't, Marcus. I need more than you can give me. And that baby." She'd glanced at Maya's crib with something close to disgust. "I'm not mother material. I never was." She'd walked out that same day, filed for divorce within the week, signed away all parental rights within the month. And the last thing she'd said to him, standing in the courthouse hallway, was, "You'll always be alone, Marcus. Because who could love a man who has nothing?" Now here she was, proving her own point. She'd found someone who could give her the life she wanted. Someone who wasn't Marcus. He stood frozen, the tray trembling in his hands. Denise hadn't seen him. Why would she? Caterers were part of the scenery. But she was here in his space, and that old familiar feeling was crawling up his spine. The feeling of being inadequate, insufficient, fundamentally wrong. Marcus forced himself to move toward the service entrance. He needed to get out of sight, needed to breathe, needed to... Someone collided with him from the side. It happened fast. A woman in a midnight blue evening gown moving backward while talking to someone stepped directly into Marcus's path. He tried to pivot, but his dress shoes, borrowed from his roommate because his own had a hole in the sole, slipped on the polished floor. The tray tilted. Champagne flutes tumbled through the air in slow motion. The woman spun around, startled, just as Marcus tried to catch himself. His hand shot out, grabbed her arm for balance, but the momentum was already carrying them both down. They fell together in a tangle of limbs and expensive fabric, and Marcus's world narrowed to a single horrifying realization. He was going to land on top of her in front of everyone, including Denise. But that's not what happened. The woman, smaller than him, lighter, somehow twisted mid-fall with the grace of someone who'd taken years of dance lessons. She rotated, using his weight against him, and they landed with her on top. More specifically, she landed directly on his lap, her back against his chest, seated between his legs as he sat sprawled on the marble floor. For a moment, there was absolute silence. The kind of silence that comes when an entire room of people simultaneously stops talking to stare at the same thing. Marcus could feel 200 pairs of eyes on them, could sense the phones being pulled out to capture this moment. His face burned. This was worse than anything he'd imagined. He was now a spectacle, a story people would tell tomorrow over brunch. The woman began to stand, started to extract herself from his lap with whispered apologies. And that's when Marcus saw her. Denise staring directly at him, recognition dawning on her face, followed by something that looked almost like satisfaction, as if his humiliation confirmed everything she'd ever said about him. Her companion noticed her attention and followed her gaze. Marcus watched Denise lean in close to the man, whispering something behind her hand. The man's expression shifted to amusement. They were laughing at him. Of course they were. Something inside Marcus snapped. Not with anger, but with a sudden, desperate need to prove her wrong, to show her that he wasn't alone, that someone could want him. It was stupid. It was irrational. It was born from 3 years of pain and every lonely night wondering if she'd been right. The woman was almost standing now, her weight lifting off his lap. Marcus made a decision. His hands came up to her waist, firm but gentle, holding her in place. She froze, surprised. But before she could pull away, Marcus leaned forward. His lips came close to her ear, close enough that anyone watching would think this was intimate. "Don't move," he whispered. His voice was low, urgent, threaded with pleading. "Please, just for a minute. Don't move." The woman went completely still. Marcus could feel her heart beating fast against his palm, could sense the war happening in her mind as she tried to decide if he was dangerous, crazy, or something else entirely. Around them, the crowd's whispers were growing louder. Phones were definitely recording now. But Marcus didn't care about any of that. His eyes were locked on Denise. On the way, her smile was faltering, the way confusion was replacing her amusement. The woman turned her head slightly, not enough to dislodge him, but enough that he could see the angle of her jaw, the elegant line of her neck. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but clear, with an edge of steel beneath the confusion. "What exactly are you doing?" she asked. Marcus's grip loosened fractionally, giving her the option to leave, but he didn't let go. Not while Denise was still watching. "Surviving," he said simply. "I'm surviving." Something in his tone must have communicated the desperation, the rawness. Because instead of pulling away, instead of demanding he release her, she did something unexpected. She settled back against him, consciously, deliberately, as if making a choice. Her weight relaxed into his lap, her spine straightened, and her chin lifted with the kind of confidence that came from boardrooms and billion-dollar deals. When she spoke again, her voice carried across the room, clear and unbothered. "You really should watch where you're walking," she said with a hint of amusement. "Though I suppose there are worse places to land." A few people nearby laughed. Uncertain laughter, but laughter nonetheless. The tension in the room shifted slightly. Marcus felt the woman's hand come to rest on his where it held her waist, her fingers cool and steady. She was helping him. This stranger was helping him maintain this insane fiction. He finally looked at her properly and felt his breath catch. She was beautiful in a way that seemed almost engineered. Sharp cheekbones, elegant neck, warm brown skin that seemed to glow under the chandeliers, eyes so dark they were nearly black. But there was something else there too. Intelligence, assessment, the kind of shrewd awareness that came from spending years reading people and situations. "Thank you," Marcus whispered. The woman's head tilted slightly, acknowledging his words. Her eyes scanned the room, paused on Denise, lingered there with an expression Marcus couldn't read, then moved on. "The woman in red," she said quietly. "The one staring at us like we've personally offended her existence. Who is she?" Marcus's throat tightened. "My ex-wife." He felt a new quality enter her stillness. Understanding, maybe. When she spoke again, there was something different in her voice, something almost kind. "I see," she said, then louder, addressing the room more than him. "Well, this is certainly more interesting than another boring charity gala." More laughter, less uncertain this time. The crowd was starting to relax, starting to interpret this as some kind of eccentric performance. Denise was still staring, but her expression had changed. The satisfaction was gone, replaced by confusion, maybe even uncertainty. Marcus knew he should feel triumphant. This was what he'd wanted, wasn't it? But instead, he just felt hollow, because no matter how convincing this looked, it was still a lie. The woman seemed to sense his shift in mood. Her hand tightened on his just slightly, a small gesture of solidarity. "How long do you need?" she asked quietly. Marcus blinked. She was asking how long he needed her to maintain this fiction. It was a gift, an act of kindness, from a stranger who had absolutely no reason to help him. "I don't know," he admitted. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have—" "Don't apologize," she interrupted. "Just tell me what you need." "I need her to see that she was wrong," Marcus said, the words coming out raw and honest. "I need her to see that someone can want me, even if it's not real, even if it's just for tonight." The silence stretched between them. Marcus waited for the woman to push away, to call him crazy. But she didn't move. Instead, he felt her shift her weight, settling more comfortably against him. Her other hand came up to rest on his arm, and when she spoke, there was steel in her voice. "Then let's give her a show," she said. Jasmine Sterling knew about shows. She'd been performing one for most of her adult life. The show of being a brilliant businesswoman, a self-made billionaire, someone who didn't need anyone except her own intelligence and drive. She'd built her tech empire from nothing, had her face on magazine covers, had world leaders taking her calls. She was 28 years old and worth $3 billion, and everyone thought they knew exactly who she was. They were all wrong. Sitting on this stranger's lap in the middle of the Morrison Foundation gala with hundreds of phones recording them, Jasmine felt more authentic than she had in months. Because this ridiculous, spontaneous act of kindness for a man whose name she didn't even know was the first genuine choice she'd made all evening. Everything else had been calculated. The midnight blue Valentino gown, the minimal jewelry, the precise timing of her arrival, the careful conversations with donors and board members. She'd been performing flawlessly until she'd quite literally fallen into this man's lap. And now here she was, sitting on a marble floor with her dress probably ruined and her reputation definitely in question, helping a complete stranger prove something to his ex-wife. It was insane. It was impulsive. Jasmine loved it. She could feel the man beneath her. Marcus, she'd heard him called earlier by one of the other caterers. His hands on her waist were trembling slightly, his heart racing against her back. He was terrified, but he was also determined. She recognized that combination. "What's your full name?" Jasmine asked quietly. "Marcus Thompson," he said. His voice was steadier now, as if having a concrete task was giving him something to focus on. "Well, Marcus Thompson," Jasmine said, "I'm Jasmine Sterling, and I think we're going to be the talk of this party for quite some time." She felt him tense. "I'm sorry. I know this is—" "You can get up, please. I shouldn't have—" "Marcus," Jasmine interrupted gently. "Stop apologizing. I said I'd help, and I meant it. Besides, this is the most interesting thing that's happened to me in months. Do you have any idea how boring most charity galas are?" A surprised laugh escaped him. Jasmine smiled. Good. He was relaxing. Around them, the crowd was slowly returning to their conversations, though Jasmine could feel eyes on them constantly. Phones were still recording. This would be all over social media within the hour. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, she had a stranger's ex-wife to intimidate. Jasmine's eyes found Denise again. She was still watching them. Jasmine recognized the type immediately. Beautiful, polished, the kind of woman who'd learned early that her looks were currency. The man beside her was old enough to be her father, wealthy enough to drip with it. "Tell me about her," Jasmine said. "Not the whole story, just the important parts." Marcus was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with old pain. "We got married young. I was 22, working as a graphic designer, trying to make it as an artist on the side. She was a model. We thought we were in love. Then she got pregnant. Unplanned. She said she wanted to keep it. But after Maya was born..." He trailed off. But Jasmine could fill in the rest. People who loved the idea of something but couldn't handle the reality. "She left when Maya was 6 months old," Marcus continued. "Told me she'd made a mistake, that she couldn't be a mother. She signed away all her parental rights and married someone rich within a year. The last thing she said to me was that I'd always be alone, that no one could love someone as ordinary as me." Jasmine felt anger kindle in her chest, hot and sharp. "And now she's here," Jasmine said. "Seeing you again for the first time in 3 years, seeing you with me." "Seeing me as a caterer," Marcus corrected quietly, "as exactly what she always said I'd be. Nothing." "No," Jasmine said firmly. "She's seeing you with a woman on your lap who's worth $3 billion and chose to stay here instead of getting up and walking away. That's not nothing, Marcus." She felt him process that. Jasmine had spoken louder than necessary, making sure her voice carried. Let them hear. Let the story spread that Jasmine Sterling had willingly stayed in this man's lap. Denise had definitely heard. Jasmine saw her face go pale. "You're Jasmine Sterling," Marcus said, realization dawning. "The Jasmine Sterling? Oh God." I grabbed Jasmine Sterling and told her not to move. "I'm going to be arrested." "You're going to breathe," Jasmine said calmly. "And you're going to trust me. Can you do that?" "I don't understand why you're helping me." Jasmine considered how to answer. The truth was that she'd spent the last year fending off a hostile takeover attempt from Derek Collins, a venture capitalist who'd spent 6 months trying to acquire her company, and 6 months before that trying to acquire her. When she'd refused both, he'd started a whisper campaign about her being difficult, unstable. The tech world loved a narrative about a young black woman who'd risen too high too fast. Being seen with a man on her terms in a situation that suggested genuine connection would do more to counter Derek's narrative than a dozen press releases. But that wasn't the whole truth. "Because," she said quietly, "I know what it's like to have someone try to make you feel small, to use your vulnerabilities against you, to act like you're fundamentally unlovable because you don't fit into their narrow definition of acceptable. And I know what it's like to wish someone had stood with you instead of just watching it happen." Marcus was silent, then very quietly, "Thank you." Jasmine squeezed his hand. "You're welcome. Now, are you ready to really sell this?" "What do you mean?" "I mean that we've established I'm staying on your lap, but we haven't established why. And people love a story, Marcus, so let's give them one." Before he could respond, Jasmine shifted. She turned in his lap, careful and deliberate, until she was facing him instead of facing out toward the room. Her body angled toward his, creating an intimate tableau that would photograph beautifully. She looked at him properly for the first time. He was handsome, not in the polished way of the men in her usual circles, but in a real way that suggested substance over style. Dark skin smooth and rich like mahogany, close-cropped hair with a perfect lineup, strong jaw dusted with evening stubble. eyes that were warm and brown and currently wide with panic. He looked genuine, like someone who'd lived a real life with real problems. "Hi," Jasmine said, a small smile playing at her lips. "Hi," Marcus managed. His hands had moved from her waist to hover awkwardly in the air. Jasmine took his hands and placed them back on her waist. "Keep them there. People are watching." "I'm not comfortable touching you," Marcus said honestly. "I'm terrified I'm going to do something wrong and get tackled by security." Jasmine laughed. A real laugh, not the practiced one she used at business dinners. "My security team knows better than to tackle someone without my signal. You're safe, but you are going to have to relax a little. You look like you're being held hostage." "I feel like I'm holding you hostage." "You're not, I promise. I'm here because I want to be. Because I think your ex-wife is a fool for letting you go, and because I happen to like messing with people's expectations." "People expect you to sit on random caterers' laps at charity galas?" "No," Jasmine admitted. "They expect me to be cold, calculating, and completely focused on business. They expect me to be untouchable. So sitting here with you, looking like I'm exactly where I want to be, that destroys their expectations. And I love destroying expectations." Something shifted in Marcus's expression. Understanding. His hands relaxed, fractionally. "You're using me too," he said, not accusing, just observing. "Yes," she said simply, "but I'm not using you to hurt someone. I'm using you to prove a point. There's a difference." "What point?" "That I'm human, that I can be spontaneous. Also, there's a man named Derek Collins who's been telling anyone who will listen that I'm incapable of genuine connection. He's here tonight, and I would very much like him to see me proving him wrong." Marcus absorbed this. Then he smiled. Small, tentative, but genuine. "So we're both using each other to prove points to people who've underestimated us." "Exactly." "That's either really healthy or really messed up." Jasmine laughed again. "Probably both." She glanced around, spotted Denise still watching with barely concealed shock. "How are you feeling? Do you need to keep this going, or have you seen enough of her reaction?" Marcus followed her gaze, looked at his ex-wife for a long moment. Something complicated crossed his face. Pain, yes, but also something like closure. "I think I might need to talk to her. Actually, talk to her." Jasmine understood immediately. He'd made his point, but he wouldn't feel complete until he faced her directly. "Then let's stand up. Together, and you can go talk to her while I watch your back." "You'd do that?" "I've already committed to sitting on your lap in front of 300 people. Watching your back while you talk to your ex-wife is relatively tame by comparison." He studied her face, searching for something. Apparently he found it because he nodded. "Okay. Yeah, let's do that." Jasmine stood first, graceful, despite the awkwardness. She extended her hand to Marcus, helping him up. He took it, his grip strong and warm. When he stood, she realized he was taller than she'd expected, broad-shouldered beneath the ill-fitting catering uniform. The crowd had fallen silent again. Jasmine kept her hand in Marcus's, threading their fingers together deliberately. She wanted everyone to see it. Wanted Denise to see it. Wanted Derek Collins to see it. "Ready?" she asked quietly. Marcus squeezed her hand. "As I'll ever be." They walked together across the ballroom floor toward Denise. Jasmine could feel the crowd parting for them, could hear the whispers following in their wake. This would be the story of the gala. Denise watched them approach with an expression that cycled through shock, confusion, and finally, defensive anger. Her companion, Jasmine, recognized him now as Ronald Patterson, old money real estate empire, looked vaguely amused. When they reached her, Marcus stopped. He was still holding Jasmine's hand, but she could feel the slight tremor running through him. This was hard for him. Jasmine squeezed his hand once, a silent message of support. "Denise," Marcus said. His voice was steady, calmer than Jasmine expected. "Marcus." Denise's eyes flicked between him and Jasmine. I didn't expect to see you here, working an event. The emphasis on the last word was subtle, but cutting. Yes, Marcus said simply. I work. I take care of my daughter. I live my life. And apparently I meet interesting people. Denise's eyes narrowed. You're Jasmine Sterling. I am, Jasmine confirmed pleasantly. And you're with him? Denise's tone suggested she couldn't quite believe it. Jasmine felt anger flash through her again. She opened her mouth to deliver a cutting response, but Marcus spoke first. Jasmine, would you mind giving us a minute? I need to talk to Denise alone. Jasmine looked at him, surprised. She'd been ready to defend him, but Marcus was asking her to step back, to let him handle this himself. It was the right call. This was his closure to find. Of course, Jasmine said. She squeezed his hand one more time, then released it. But before she stepped away, she turned to Denise with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. He's right, you know. He did meet someone interesting. I hope you two have a productive conversation. Jasmine walked away, heading toward the bar where she could keep an eye on Marcus while giving him space. Marcus watched Jasmine walk away, her midnight blue gown flowing behind her like water. Even surrounded by wealth and glamour, she stood out. Not because she was trying to, but because she carried herself like she belonged wherever she decided to stand. But first, he had to deal with the woman who'd spent 3 years living rent-free in his head. Denise looked different up close, older, though she was only 30, harder. The diamonds at her throat caught the light. Marcus wondered if they made her happy. So, Denise said, her voice tight, you're dating Jasmine Sterling. That's quite the upgrade from a single father working in logistics. Marcus felt the familiar sting. But something was different now. Maybe it was having Jasmine in his corner. Maybe it was 3 years of raising Maya alone and realizing he was stronger than he'd thought. I'm not dating her, Marcus said honestly. We just met tonight. But I think maybe we could be friends. Denise blinked. Then why the show? Why make everyone think? Because I saw you, Marcus interrupted, and I panicked. Because the last thing you said to me was that I'd always be alone, that no one could love someone like me. And I wanted you to be wrong, even if just for one night, even if it was fake. Silence fell between them. Ronald had drifted away, giving them privacy. I did love you, Denise said finally, her voice quieter. When we got married, I did. I know, Marcus said. But you didn't love Maya, and you didn't love the life we were building. That's okay, Denise. You're allowed to want different things, but you're not allowed to make me feel worthless because I want what you don't. Denise's face crumpled slightly. I see Maya sometimes. Online. You post about her on social media. She looks happy. Marcus's chest tightened. She is happy. She's smart, funny, kind. She asks about you sometimes. I tell her the truth, that you weren't ready to be a mom, that it wasn't her fault. Tears gathered in Denise's eyes. Does she hate me? No, Marcus said truthfully. She doesn't hate you. She barely remembers you. Denise flinched. I made a mistake leaving like I did, saying what I said, but I was drowning, Marcus. I felt like I was suffocating. So you left, Marcus said. And that's fine. That's your choice. But you didn't have to destroy me on the way out. You didn't have to tell me I was unlovable. I know. Denise's voice cracked. I was cruel. I was trying to convince myself I was making the right choice, and the only way I could do that was by making you the wrong one. I'm sorry, Marcus. I'm genuinely sorry. Marcus absorbed the apology. It didn't erase 3 years of pain, but it was something, a small piece of closure he hadn't expected. Thank you, he said, for saying that. Ronald reappeared at Denise's elbow. We should go, darling. The Washingtons are having that after party. Denise looked at Marcus one more time, regret in her eyes. Take care of yourself, Marcus, and give Maya a hug for me, even if she doesn't remember who it's from. I will, Marcus promised. They walked away. Marcus stood alone for a moment, processing. He'd confronted his ex-wife. He'd gotten an apology. He'd told her his best was enough, and somehow he believed it. Jasmine appeared at his side, 2 glasses of champagne in her hands. She offered one to him. "You okay?" Marcus took the glass, his hands steadier. "Yeah, actually, I think I am." Jasmine clinked her glass against his. "Good, because we still have a few hours left and I think we should enjoy them." They spent the rest of the evening together, not as a couple, but as 2 people who'd accidentally found common ground. Jasmine introduced him to people who'd never normally talked to a caterer, and Marcus held his own in conversations about tech and venture capital. Jasmine seemed genuinely interested when he talked about Maya, about his art. Around 11, Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Williams. "Maya woke up asking for you. She's back asleep, but she left you a drawing on the kitchen table." "You need to go," Jasmine said, reading his expression. "Yeah," Marcus admitted. "I'm sorry." "Don't apologize. Your daughter needs you. That's what matters." Marcus pulled out his phone and showed Jasmine pictures of Maya. "She's why I do all of this. She's everything." Jasmine looked at the photos, her expression softening. "She's beautiful and clearly loved." Jasmine pulled out her own phone and showed Marcus her contact information. "I meant what I said about being friends. If you ever need anything, help with Maya's school fees or just someone to talk to, you call me, okay?" Marcus saved the contact, overwhelmed. "Thank you. And if you ever need someone to remind you that you're human, that you're allowed to make spontaneous decisions, you call me. Deal?" Jasmine laughed. "Deal." They stood there for a moment. 2 people who'd started the evening as strangers and were ending it as something else. Impulsively, Marcus leaned in and kissed her cheek. Brief, chaste. Jasmine's eyes widened, surprise and pleasure flickering across her face. "Good night, Jasmine." "Good night, Marcus." Marcus walked toward the service entrance. Outside, he texted Jasmine. "Thank you for everything. Tonight was insane and wonderful and exactly what I needed." The response came immediately. "Likewise. Drive safe and tell Maya her dad is pretty great." Marcus smiled and walked to his car, a 10-year-old Honda with a child's car seat in the back. It wasn't much, but it was his. Denise had been wrong. He wasn't nothing. He was a father, a friend, a man who showed up every day. He was someone a billionaire had chosen to help, to trust, to offer friendship to. He was enough. When he got home, Maya's drawing waited. A crayon picture of the 2 of them holding hands under a rainbow. At the top, in wobbly letters, "I love you, Daddy." Marcus took a picture and sent it to Jasmine. "This is why I'm rich." Her response, "That's the best kind of wealth. Sleep well, Marcus." He checked on Maya, fast asleep clutching her stuffed rabbit, then got ready for bed. As he lay in the dark, Marcus realized tonight hadn't been about proving Denise wrong. It had been about remembering who he was, about recognizing his own worth, through 3 years of showing up for his daughter every single day. And maybe he'd made a friend who understood that. That was more than enough. That was everything.